The relentless curiosity of our species endures, driving us to question, to expand our horizons, to push boundaries, all of which are prerequisites of survival. The comfort found in established maps of meaning is eventually overcome in one of two ways. Either inquisitive individuals begin to question them, or empirical reality starts to erode them, revealing that what we once took as a foundation of security and meaning was, in fact, nothing more than a fig leaf. It is fortunate if we recognize the latter in time, but the true heroism of humanity lies in the former. Let us now listen to Richard Newnan's thoughts after his conversation with Professor Pillman.
So they are scared too. Scared, the eggheads. And maybe that's how it should be. They should be even more scared than the rest of us ordinary folks put together, because we merely don't understand a thing, but they at least understand how much they don't understand. They gaze into this bottomless pit and know that they will inevitably have to climb down. Their hearts are racing, but they'll have to do it. Except they don't know how or what awaits them at the bottom, or, most important, whether they'll be able to get back out. Meanwhile, we sinners look the other way, so to speak. Listen, maybe that's how it should be? Let things take their course, and we'll muddle through somehow. He was right about that. Mankind's most impressive achievement is that it has survived and intends to continue doing so.
Seen from this perspective, we get an image of scientists and researchers as the light-bringers of humanity on its path of survival and expansion. In this regard, the ecologists in the game are the true antithesis of the monolith and the only serious player when it comes to meaning and knowledge. Contrary to the previously mentioned desire for happiness free for all, which essentially implies giving up on the search for and awareness of truth and consequently humanity itself, scientists embrace our inquisitive nature despite the enormous cost and the fundamentally insatiable longing. Just think of the Austrian genius Ludwig Boltzmann, or perhaps the greatest Serb Nikola Tesla. Genius, research, discipline, and questioning often, if not always, bring loneliness, exhaustion, and disillusionment due to the deconstruction of previous worldviews or the inability of contemporaries to comprehend the depth of what Newnan calls a bottomless pit. Of course, this abyss remains ultimately unfathomable, but the mere striving for its understanding and the courage to face the darkness that makes it is the thing that truly counts. Thus, we can say when comparing the path to meaning in knowledge with the path to meaning in belonging or the fulfillment of desires and happiness, that scientists heroically accept painful existence in contrast to the illusion of success. For everything around us shows that merging with the collective, fulfilling desires and happiness can't be counted as success. All three of these make us less active, less combative, and the euphoria they initially bring fades quickly. When it vanishes, we face challenges again, but poorer for the time spent and the accomplishments not achieved during moments of total surrender to sweet sensations. This sentiment permeates 2001: A Space Odyssey and is most evident in the final scenes of the film. The complexity of the evolutionary journey, the fears and challenges of existence, the expansion and exploration despite the unfathomable darkness, all find their justification in contrast to comfortable, yet meaningless life of abundance. A peaceful death without noise or fanfare still does not bring relief, but rather a hand reaching toward the monolith, a plea for another chance. In doing so, the parallel with our ancestors is cemented as they initiated the awakening with the same gesture, and the benevolent creator offers a new opportunity. A similar interpretation can be found in Stalker the movie, where the ending, though lacking resolution, restores the vibrancy of the world outside the zone in the scenes with the child nicknamed Monkey. Stress, self-examination, exploration, and passage through an inner crisis can trigger a process of healing and a renewed belief in the magic of existence. Though we never see the room's magic directly, we witness the daughter's telepathic abilities, which testify to the power of the human mind and its decisive role in our existence, despite the heavy price that consciousness demands. The evolutionary process continues, the new generation learns about the endeavors of the previous one, and humanity is granted another chance. Similarly, since we have previously stated that the symbolic representation of wish fulfillment in the game is through the fact that Strelok is only faced with death and blindness, it is clear that this conclusion can also be transposed to the world of the video game. Meaning lies in knowledge, not in the fulfillment of desires, while the wish granter as a manifestation of the wrong path demonstrates the futility, artificiality, and abuse of this longing. Likewise, in the contrast to the clan members who, no matter how convinced they are of the correctness of their worldview, understand virtually nothing, scientists, using Noonan's terms once again, understand how little they truly understand and how complex the problem of the zone really is. This leads us to another important conclusion. Unlike factions that provide us with an answer in a form that insists on is, scientists in Noonan's interpretation do so through negation, is not. Because in the statement, they at least understand how much they don't understand, there is an inherent message that in many cases they have deconstructed and discarded previously accepted hypotheses or worldviews that, for a time, allow them to understand. Therefore, knowledge lies in rejection, not confirmation. But before we let the allure of our thoughts carry us too far, it is necessary to highlight a problem in this kind of simplification, namely, our tendency to view complex social phenomena as a homogeneous block, whether it is humanity, civilization, the state, or science. The inability to recognize their components and the specificities of the actors or coalitions that make them up is a direct consequence of what we previously warned about, the mixing of pure forms with the untidy reality. This can certainly be forgiven for someone like Noonan, whose thoughts might be swirling in his head during a drive, but such luxury cannot be easily accepted in our case. Therefore, it is important to return to our limitations, prejudices, weaknesses, and the evil to which we are capable. Scientists are not exempt from this. After all, it is precisely members of this social layer who create the zone in the world of Stalker. If we now invoke Christian mythology, we will remember that Lucifer actually means Lightbringer, a name derived from the term we have not used by accident in describing scientists. And it is this fallen angel's ambition to seize power in heaven and assume a divine role that leads us to the third point on the path of cognition. To recall, the path of the search for meaning and truth goes from the monkeys and monolith, where the foundation is sight which gives birth to thought, through clans and abstractions where the foundation is thought seemingly separate from the physical phenomena, to the sea consciousness and the noosphere, in whose foundation lies being, liberated from sensory and physical limitations. The chain is as follows. Senses and interaction with the environment create thought. Man is dependent on an evolutionary path which he did not consciously choose. However, it is precisely this development that drives him toward the gradual development of a yearning and the idea of liberation from disappointingly natural. Thought undergoes expansion, man creates imagined ideals purified of everything he perceives as negative, and then engages in activities in the physical world to realize them with inevitable failure. The ideal remains a guiding star for a time, but its shine gradually fades. Thought evolves further, and as an alternative to physical territorial expansion, the idea of transcendence emerges. What if individual minds merge into one whole, ultimate intelligence, and in the so-called final stage of cosmic development become one with the universe? What if, at the omega point, the essence of humanity transforms into the strings that weave the universe? What if thought and action become one and Homo sapiens becomes a deity or merges with one? What if Homo sapiens becomes the creator, meaning, and truth? This would seemingly mark the end of the previous futile search, regardless of whether it manifested through ritual, faith, or evolutionary idealism. However, as in all previous stages, information once again primarily flows from us, not necessarily towards us. The omega point and the noosphere are merely ideas to which we attach desired outcomes, but desires and fulfillment dramatically differ, and once again we know nothing about the path to these ideals. Therefore, creation itself is a consequence of our limitations, whatever they may be, and there are many of them. On the other hand, excessive self-belief, a longing for divine powers, and the idea that it is our right to judge empirical reality can easily invoke nemesis. Hubris in the blink of an eye results in a punishment that humiliates what is elevated, brings the overly joyous down from their heights, and in this way establishes equality. It is clear that at this level there will also be differences in understanding the path to divinity and the interpretation of the justification for such activities. And as we've said earlier, reconsideration, debate, returning to starting points, and reconciliation require much time. Time that self-proclaimed emperors, grand inquisitors, Führers of all kind, benefactors of mankind who seek to remake the world potentially do not have. This brings us to the final step, to the wish granter, to the monolith as an object and a faction. In the world of Stalker, the self-proclaimed saviors shorten the time needed for decision-making through the centralization of power and conspiratorial alliances, through death as a stick and synthetic meaning as a carrot. To achieve a world of freedom, peace, purity, and happiness, they enslave, kill, or experiment on their fellow countrymen. In their ambition to reach superhuman status, they deprive anyone who is not part of their group of chosen ones of their humanity. The meaning they offer involves the erasement of mental abilities and submissiveness, so the choice of the term monolith is not surprising. On the other hand, the punishment for those who seek the truth or fulfillment outside their will is death. The wish granter turns things upside down. Do you want immortality? You will become metal. Do you want to rule? You will become energy for the monolith. Do you believe that humanity must be under control? We will erase your thoughts and hand you over to the darkness. Do you want the zone to disappear? You will no longer see it because we will blind you. Taking this into account, it is not surprising that throughout the entire game we see clear lines leading to the logic on which the Soviet Union functioned. Because, as fictional character Teja, depicted by Branislav Lečić, says in a Serbian movie called The Professional, it took nature 1,000,000 years to turn a monkey into a man, but communism only took 50 years to turn a man back into a monkey. However, we should not fall into the simplistic demonization of communism, which is common in American propaganda. Unlike the image in which red demons from the East seek to enslave the good, honest, and freedom-loving West, the tragedy of communism is also the tragedy of humanity in general. If we were to summarize this in one quote, there is no better candidate than Czech novelist Milan Kundera, although he speaks only about Central Europe. Anyone who thinks that the communist regimes of Central Europe are exclusively the work of criminals is overlooking a basic truth. The criminal regimes were not made by criminals, but by enthusiasts convinced they had discovered the only road to paradise. They defended the road so valiantly that they were forced to execute many people. Later, it became clear that there was no paradise, that the enthusiasts were therefore murderers. In their murderous battle for an earthly paradise, communist regimes provided a colorful lie which so deeply impregnated human souls longing for meaning that to this day this synthetic substance survives like tar in hard-to-reach places. Therefore, it should not be surprising that nostalgia for the red times does not only exist among those who personally carried communism in one form or another, such as in the USSR or Yugoslavia, but also in Romania or Germany, where they coined a special term for it, nostalgie. Of course, as in most other cases, nostalgia primarily comes from dissatisfaction with the present, reflecting on a past that has been largely filtered or even imagined, as well as a longing for youth. However, this does not mean that there is not a deeper problem of lost meaning or security. As much as Yugoslavism and communism are personally foreign and even hostile ideas or aspirations from my perspective, for others they represented lofty ideals. And I vividly remember the stories of older neighbors or relatives who longingly recounted how they were a part of the struggle for liberation from foreign or domestic predators, regardless of whether they were partisan fighters, workers, or intellectuals. And that is why many are not able to truly grasp the tragedy of existence throughout the former USSR after the collapse of the murderous system. As we said in the introduction, once the colorful light dissipates and the synthetic meaning evaporates, every soul is left alone before the abyss, battered by rain and winds. It is not surprising then that some wish to rid themselves of the burden of freedom that befell them,